copacetic with? I guess it is. Thank you. So welcome to the Astor Cafe for Monday, September the 23rd. We have an interesting program with several different speakers and announcements. So I'm going to just try to move forward with that a little bit. I want to start with a presentation that I have for my trip to South America last spring. Touched on a number of items of interest to astronomy, and I thought I just wanted to share it with you folks. So if I can share my screen with you.
Let's keep turning the volume up. Volume. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Is that showing up with people? Just give me a thumbs up, maybe, David, could you? Dave Lee?
And it's not hot, Randy, so
You don't see anything up?
I tried putting, I put water in, I put coffee in there, but the coffee's hotter on top. This is not, yeah, it's still cold.
I can see a folder
Okay,
with a PowerPoint
Thank you.
presentation highlighted. You maybe double click on it.
Yeah,
You're talking to me.
thank you.
You see that? It should say astronomy in South America.
Thanks.
You see,
The folder is there, but not the presentation.
oh,
So
okay.
I think you need to pick a
Just
different
drag
screen.
it. I think
Pick
you
it-
need to drag it onto, wherever you are.
Interesting.
Or just share the app
Yeah.
Yeah,
if you prefer.
that'll work too.
I thought I was sharing it. Gone to share. Okay, maybe your screen sharing. Stop the share. Okay, so I've stopped the share now. Got you guys back. I'm going to go to screen share again.
There it is.
You see it
That-
now? You see a small one or a large one?
Just
Yeah.
press play and we're done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just need to put it into a slideshow.
Yeah, it's in slideshow.
In
not yet.
full screen.
Now it is.
There we go. There we go.
You see that now? Does it say astronomy in South America there?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does.
Super, good. And you see a map there?
Yeah.
Okay, good. We're away. Okay, so last spring I had the opportunity to spend a couple of weeks several weeks in Peru and Ecuador. Everything okay there, guys?
Yep.
Okay. This presentation is going to break down, I think, into a couple of different parts, and I think maybe I'll talk about Ecuador next time I'm hosting, which will be next month. But we'll see where we go to. I just want to leave some time for other things to come up. Anyway, so the issue, the interesting things in Peru that I found had to do with the Inca civilization and some of the places we visited in Peru. I'm going to have to understand the impact of the sky and astronomy on the Inca culture. I need to just walk you through a couple of things so you just have a sense of, where that culture existed and why it existed the way it did. Peru currently is a country that's a little bit smaller than Iran. It's about the 20th largest country in the world. Current population is about 33 million. It's bordered on the north by Ecuador and Colombia, on the east by Brazil, and on the south by Bolivia. It's of importance. It lies in the southern hemisphere, between about 2 minutes south to about 18 degrees south. The land itself is really, there's all kinds of microclimates, but it breaks down into close to low area the majority of the backbone of being the Andes, which is where the Inca culture really took off and was centered. And then the northern portion is the Amazon, and the rivers there flow down into the Amazon. It's basically rainforest in northeastern Peru. All of this became part of the Inca Empire, so that there were different parts that were pulled from, which impacts on what sort of things were important in the sky. In about 1400, the Incas were one of several highland tribes, and the tribes back and forth sort of formed small empires, and then broke, and there was another alliance. Really, the Inca Empire itself arose in about the 1430s, and really of interest, it only lasted about 120 years. It was mostly a peaceful amalgamation of the local tribes, but because of the way they amalgamated, it may be part of the reason that they came apart so quickly when the Spaniards came. Most of the unification of tribes there began under Pachacuti, who was the celebrated leader in 1430. He was Quechan, and that became the major dominant language of the area. The Inca Empire, when it grew to its fullest, was about 2 million square kilometers and stretched from southern Colombia to northern Chile. This is really a map of the expansions. Under Pachacuti, it was the purple, centered in Peru, and then with various leaders, I think you can see my pointer here, with various leaders, it expanded up into Ecuador and down into both Argentina and northern Chile, or what we know now as northern Argentina and northern Chile. The culture and economics and the astronomy there were really defined by the geography, the fact that the area is mostly very high and the sky is right in your face. Because of the height, agriculture became very, very important. So anything that could be eaten out of the land was, and because of the nature of the growing season, the sun became the dominant attribute that was looked to and celebrated. So the Inca Empire was really centered around the capital in Cusco, which I'll show you on another map, is sort of this, about 2/3 of the way down Peru in the mountains. The culture itself didn't involve money, didn't involve markets. There was an exchange of goods based only on reciprocity. There was no written language, which is interesting in that most of the information we have now comes from either the current archaeology, the oral traditions that were passed down, or the written accounts by the Spanish quotation marks observers, which tended to be filtered through their own understanding and their own biases. So there's a lot that really isn't certain. And if you're looking at anything about the Incas or about that time, you really need to make sure that you're reading stuff that's pretty current, because the ideas change quite a bit on the basis of new discoveries. So just back to the Inca culture for a minute. The taxes were just obligation of labor. Goods were shared, and everybody was obligated to spend some time working on behalf of the empire. Because of the importance of agriculture and the growing season, the sun was a dominant god there. The sun governed harvests. The moon, as the culture spread to the lowlands, to the sea, the moon also became of great importance because it governed tides. So as it turned out, the area is rich in both gold and silver. Gold was celebrated to represent the sun, and silver represented the moon, used for both the ritual and religious ornamentation throughout the nation. And this is, of course, something the Spaniards found wonderful, because they were looking for both silver and gold, and they couldn't believe that these folks only saw it of importance with ritual and religious celebration. So they really were able to harvest a lot of the gold and silver when they came. The Lorco Museum in Lima probably has the best collection of the Inca gold ornamentation and silver ornamentation. And I mean, it's pretty stupendous, but the back rooms of the Lorca Museum are also row after row after row after row of pottery and gold ornaments and silver ornaments that aren't even on display. It's a row after row. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Inca religion, the astronomy there was focused because of the close link to the stars and to the sky. The main gods of the Incas was the sun. They worshiped the moon, stars, and lightning. And stars took on some importance with respect to the growing season, as you'll see. World in the Inca culture was divided into three. There was the upper world of the gods, the earthly world of the living, and the lower world of the dead. And you'll see in some of the astronomic sites that the number three repeats itself. So the center of the Inca Empire is in what is called the Sacred Valley. This was a term that was used by the Incas, but primarily promoted currently for tourists. The Sacred Valley certainly encompasses Cusco, which was the center of the Inca world. And this is the area where you have the Incas trails through. The Inca Trail was actually just a communication pathways that they had to the various settlements. It was smooth stone so that people could get through very quickly, and they did have specific runners for communication. Most of it is in poor repair now, and one can quotation marks hike the Inca Trail, but it's pretty strenuous. The major site that we'll talk about for astronomy is up in this area, which is north and west of Cusco. It's Machu Picchu. But Machu Picchu lies along the Urubamba River, which is one of the reasons that for the site. Some of the major Inca sites also along that river are Urubamba and Ollantaytambo. The area looks like this. I mean, you can see the absolute importance of sort of stepped vegetation, stepped agriculture, as well as some high plains where growth can take place. This is a picture of the Urubamba River, which is the one that flows right by Machu Picchu. Very steep-sided. And this kind of country, there couldn't be any kind of growth in. So really stepped agriculture and the high plains were the focus of the agriculture, and they really did grow a lot of staple crops, maize in particular through this area, and stored it well. Pizarro came in 1533, and by 1572, Inca resistance was over, and really the Inca Empire was ended. The major site now of information about the Incas is Machu Picchu. And it's really because Machu Picchu was the only major site that we know of currently that wasn't discovered by the Spaniards, so wasn't destroyed or modified by the Spanish occupation. They continue to find things newly there. They have an ongoing archaeology. There's actually two schools of archaeology in Peru. One is out of Lima and the other is out of Cusco. The fellow we were traveling with was an archaeologist out of Cusco, and he had some disdain for the school in Lima, which he felt was a little bit more traditional in its beliefs. And he felt that the school based in Cusco was much more using modern techniques. They really haven't explored a lot of the area around Machu Picchu. Basically, money is short, and they're waiting for better and newer techniques for exploration before they do any further digging there. Archaeology is ongoing. You'll see that there were several sites I was unable to get to because they were closed for investigation at the time we were there. So, Machu Picchu is famous because it was discovered virtually intact. It was known about locally, but it was completely overgrown in the early 20th century when it was uncovered or discovered. Machu Picchu was discovered, just one sec, I'll get a drink. Machu Picchu was uncovered by a fellow by the name of Hiram Bingham. He was a university history professor from Yale. Hiram has an interesting background. You may remember a number of years ago, there was an author by the name of James Michener who did a bunch of historical fiction books. One of his books that was turned into a movie was a book called Hawaii. In that book and in the movie, there is a missionary who goes into Hawaii, the first missionary in Hawaii, to convert the native population there. In the movie, he brought his wife, who was played by Julie Andrews. He was a reasonably nasty, stern fellow. He was Hiram Bingham the senior, the grandfather of the Hiram Bingham who found Machu Picchu. And Hiram Bingham's father, also Hiram Bingham, also was a missionary in Hawaii. So Hiram Bingham had a questing nature and wanted to make a name for himself. He actually went to Peru to discover Vilcabamba, which was the lost city of the Incas. When he finally stumbled on Machu Picchu, he thought that was probably Vilcabamba. It's no longer thought to be because there's some larger sites that have been discovered that seem to have had larger populations deeper in the Andes, but they haven't really been fully excavated at this point. So Machu Picchu itself lies above the Urubamba River that I showed you, between two peaks, Machu Picchu and Huayna Picchu, or basically Old Peak and New Peak. Machu Picchu is surprisingly about 7,700 feet. You think of Machu Picchu as being very high. When you come to Cusco is actually 11,000 feet. So you descend to Machu Picchu at 7,700 feet. Hiram Bingham, when he came, I mean, did some interesting archaeology and made some very interesting finds, but also because he's a man of those times, he also made some real boner decisions. When he first came, he uncovered a number of skeletons and saw that they were all small. So he thought that Machu Picchu was a site either of a women's university or a site of the Virgins of the Sun, which was an elite Inca group of women. This has all been since completely disputed. DNA analysis, shows equal numbers of men and women, but even looking at the skeletons, it's obvious that some are men and some are women. But he took the ideas in a different direction for a while. The major the major religious sites are in the upper part of Machu Picchu, and the usual dwellings are in the lower part of Machu Picchu. It's divided into a higher and lower a city. It's also quite large. This is normally a picture because it's from an iconic site, but this really shows about half of it, and the half of it behind where the picture is taken from really is fields for cultivation in a stepwise manner. It's stepped in the same way that I showed you the pictures in the mountains. So this is the picture taken looking the other way towards Machu Picchu mountain. So astronomy was really tied to the agriculture there, and it was really important for the Incas to develop to identify the solstices in particular, because that was associated with changing seasons, and that was helpful with deciding when to grow, when to sow, when to harvest. So much of the site is focused on identifying the solstices and the equinox. This is a better view, and this is the one picture that I've taken from a book. The rest are from our trip. This is a better view showing the upper city, which had religious and hierarchical significance, and the lower city where the majority of people lived. We'll get into it a little bit further, but this rounded building, which is the only rounded stone building found in Inca culture at this point, is the Temple of the Sun. The Temple of three windows is here, and there's a sighting stone that's here also, and I'll talk about all these sites. And then the Intihuatana, which is basically a time clock, is located here. This is the one site we were unable to get to because of the studies that were taking place at that time. So a little bit better view. Temple of the Sun. We can't really see. This is the Temple of the Four Windows, and this is where the shadow of the time clock is situated. So just taking them one at a time. Temple of the Sun, set up to identify the winter equinox. The winter equinox was critical because that was when the sun was returning for warmth and for the growing season. They make out a lot about it just because of the nature of it and the rounded structure. As you may know, the buildings are built of large stones, and there's no mortar that's used, so it's really very carefully designed to fit together. But this is the one place where there's rounded stones fitting, so it's really quite spectacular compared to a lot of the other building that goes on there. The window, and they've spent a great deal of time identifying this, lines up exactly with the winter solstice, indicating the return of the sun. This is a view from below. I guess I should say that the Temple of the Sun was really built on top of a small cave. So when we were down below it, we could shoot up looking at some of the stone of the cave, and then you'll see a view just like looking under it. They're not really sure what the significance of this was, other than it's here now and that it probably had some religious significance. The king's palace is right next to the Temple of the Sun, so it obviously was of great ceremonial importance as well. This is a monograph. You'll find, unfortunately, all the maps are twisted. Basically, the upper portion is the east because as you'll see, the Temple of Three Windows faces east so that it can see the sun as it rises. This is from a talk given in 2013 by a professor at Georgia College in the math department. He'd done some calculation with the Temple of the Sun, showing that it aligned exactly. And in fact, they found markings on it that aligned exactly with the azimuth June 21st, 1450. Again, a different colored view, but aligned again slightly differently. The west is now up and the east is south. So this is now the Temple of Three Windows. Again, the structure here is exact. The sun rises in the winter solstice, the equinox, and the summer solstice. And it's meant to exactly replicate that. The windows are larger than other windows found in the buildings in Machu Picchu. Just take a little bit of note of this roped area because I'll get to there in a sec. Oh yeah, one other thing that they point to is that the three windows, the significance of the three windows is again part of the tripartite world where there's the upper world of the gods, the middle world of the living, and the lower world of the dead. This is a picture that we took from below. The next day we were walking in the lower city, so just a shot looking up at the Temple of Three Windows. This was the roped area that I pointed to. This is newly discovered. This information is only from the archaeologists I was with, so take it with a grain of salt because I could find no other information anywhere about it. His feeling was that this was made to line up exactly with Sirius, the alpha star in the Canis Major, because Sirius had a specific importance to the Inca culture. It rose with the time of sowing, was present for the entire growing season, and then disappeared after the harvest. So his feeling was that this cited Sirius on May the 5th, which was the indication that planting should start. This now is not a picture from our trip. This is just let me just find it. This is now the high area, meant to be of quite a bit of astronomical and religious significance. It's the site of the Intihuatana stone, or the sundial, predicting the position of the sun. Interesting. So when I was reading about it, the quote was that twice a year during the equinox, March 21st and September 21st, the sun sits directly above the Intihuatana, and it creates no shadow. That's accurately indicating the phenomenon. And I thought, well, that is interesting because Machu Picchu is about 13 degrees south latitude. So if the sun directly overhead would not actually cast no shadow, or the sun at the equinox would not cast no shadow because there would be a shadow. Then when I read further about the stone, it's actually slanted at 13 degrees. So it really was set up to cast no shadow at the time of the equinox. This was a view of just the lower part, the eastern facing part of Machu Picchu. And supposedly this is the direction that Hiram Bingham came through and disrupted some of the stone looking for artifacts. Quite different than the current archaeology that we saw. But to get any sense further of how the Incas treated the skies, we had to go away from Machu Picchu, and it was actually in a museum in Cusco. The museum was centered in the convent of Santo Domingo. And there was a little bit further information there about how the Incas viewed the skies and how they worshiped the skies and how they looked at the skies. So essentially, the Inca culture looked at the stars in two different ways. Commonly, as do many cultures, they found the stars and they used a dot-to-dot method to create pictures of animals. The constellations they saw in the sky then were considered to be inanimate. Just as an aside, the Pleiades star group was seen, identified, and was thought to be influential in the well-being of animals. They identified certain other star groups and shapes: serpent, toad, llama, fox, condor, and the Southern Cross, interestingly. What's also interesting is from the literature, it's not clear that anybody was really certain what groupings they were referring to when they referred to these different constellations. There's a couple of written dialogues with Spanish interpreters, basically saying they don't really understand. They understand the name of the star grouping, but they don't really understand which stars were represented the grouping that was being discussed. But the other way that the Inca looked at the sky had to do with the Milky Way. Milky Way was looked on as a celestial river, and they distinguished the dark spots against the light background of the Milky Way and identified them with silhouettes of animals that were coming to drink in the waters of the Milky Way. The animals in the Milky Way were thought to be living and animate, and they were thought to live in the Milky Way. So I borrowed a couple of shots from Zenfolio. This is from Joe Carr and John McDonald, just so we can see some of the Milky Way that we can see. And you know, there certainly are light and dark spots, and contrast that to a picture of the Milky Way in Peru, which again, certainly, you know, dark areas show up, in contrast to the light areas, but again, no specific identification of you know, what specific animals were represented by which blotches. So that ended my time in Peru. I'm going to just stop sharing the screen now and come back to you all. Questions, comments? I mean, are there people know stuff about it that I haven't talked about?
Jeff, that was just fantastic. You were showing great pictures. I'm wondering about how smart it is to look for the sun where it rises when you're in the mountains. Was there a kind of a hole between the mountains so you could see where the sun rose, or?
So I didn't show that well, but looking east from Machu Picchu towers over the land to the east, and you absolutely have a clear view of the sky looking east.
Yeah, the river's on the east side of the mountain.
Okay, and it's not.
So there's the mountains on the east side are further away and not quite as high.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah, there was a clear view. And that's an interesting point. That would have been a good picture shooting out one of the windows. Oh, I've got to tell you, we were sitting looking at in the Temple of the Three Windows, looking at it, and a tour group came, and they stood at the windows and they started, you know, waving their hands in front of it, drawing on the ancient power of the Incas. And our guide, the archaeologist, was metaphorically pounding his head against the rock, saying, "There's no basis for any of this stuff. Like, this is nonsense what they're doing." Anyway, it was quite amusing.
Just a comment, a question, but before that, a comment. Seeing constellations in the dark nebulae seems to be common in the southern hemisphere, at least in Australia. And one of those illustrations you showed particularly well the Emu constellation that we can see at the right time of day. So it's interesting, different perspective. I agree with you. It's just your last comment. I have a sort of a question. Maybe I missed something, or I didn't quite follow the connection. And the three windows for the sun rising at the equinox and solstice that you showed, and I thought you made some comment as how they were thought to be also associated with what is it, the upper world, the middle world, the underworld of the dead. And I was wondering how that, if I heard correctly, who connected with which?
You heard absolutely correctly, and I'm talking two different sources. The three windows is everyone of the Temple of Three Windows. Everyone talks about as identifying the winter solstice, the equinox, and the summer solstice. Yeah. Another source that I read went on to say, and if it also represented the three levels of understanding of the world. So it's just a different person's idea. I mean, it could be in terms of, and if it's not to do with the equinox and the solstice, then you know what? Damn it, it has to do with the three levels of the world. It's purely commentary that was made, Dorothy.
Oh, okay, yeah, so I'm trying to get logic in there. It's not logical.
No, don't don't apply too much logic
Yeah.
because it's different interpretations. Had you, Lauri, had you run across anything? I know you have different star displays of the constellations. Is there anything in your star displays of Inca culture, of South American culture even?
I don't think so. I would have to go and look. Um, because of the way the planetarium is set up, is that we're looking at the northern hemisphere, and it takes a little bit to switch it to the southern hemisphere and then turn it around so that people are, looking at it the right way. And so we don't often go down there. I know that one of them is Maori. So we could go there if we could kind of switch the sky. Maybe I'll do a little bit of some research and see if I can get that on. I don't remember seeing the Inca there.
Yeah,
It's more things that are now,
right.
like
No,
that are one.
print,
But when you
print
first put that up and you put up the thing, I say, oh, I wonder, I kind of do that. What I would look at is Charles Ennis's asterism, world asterisms, because there could be something in there that might be helpful. You could kind of see if you could look that up. I was just going to ask about the tourism trade up there and whether or not it's regulated. Only so many groups on the hill on one day or a week or something. Like, how's that happening?
Yeah, it's very carefully regulated. I mean, even if you talk to people who were there 6 years ago, it's increasingly regulated. They have different routes you can walk. You sign on for the different routes. You have to be with a guide. You have a time to enter. I mean, they have a specific time, but it's really within the hour, so they can regulate the number of people that access it. And they're very well, the guides are very careful of sticking to the routes. The people aren't there wandering by themselves anymore. So we had an upper route and a lower route. We were there 2 different days. The lower route was actually also allowing hiking up the Huayna Picchu, which is the far mountain, but it had rained overnight, so they'd closed it. So they're careful with safety of people coming through as well. But it's very tightly regulated, Lauri. And they're also very watchful in terms of the sites and the archaeology. I mean, there's been a little bit of graffiti before they started regulating, and it was one of the reasons that they just started so strictly regulating.
Can you give me an idea of whether it's 100 people a day or 50 people a day or 500 people a day? Like what would it be?
Yeah, it's a huge site, Lauri. Um,
It's in the thousands, but it's in the low thousands.
Thank you. I was going to
Yeah,
say,
we were there in 2011, and it was, I think, about 1,600 a day, something like that. And everyone has to be with a guide. You can't just wander around.
super.
When we were there just before the pandemic, I would guess at any one time you'd probably be 200 or 300 people on the site. We had 2 entrance times. The first day we had to go with a guide. The second time we had an entrance time, but we were allowed to go through on our own. But where they let you go is pretty well defined. There's still a lot of places where they don't let you go.
Super. Thank you. What year was that? Oh, you said just before the
Just before the pandemic. Yeah, and the second entrance we had was not too long after sunrise. And one of the most spectacular things I ever saw was standing at the overlook where you come in and you start overlooking the site, and the mist is coming up from the valley with an early sunrise. It was just stunning.
Oh, that sounds really neat.
Yeah, I would like to share a couple of photos I took in 2011. Jeff, you may find them interesting.
Oh, yeah, please do, if you've got them there.
Yeah, I just have to. So you might recognize John McDonald in this photograph, and he and the guide are checking out the alignment of north on the stone that you talked about.
We don't have the photos right now.
Just
Oh.
have,
Do you have it now?
no.
Good old Zoom. I guess
Yeah.
I'm not going to be sharing. It has some stupid security question it wants me to answer. So sorry about that.
Aw,
Well, thanks for offering, Joe. I mean,
Yeah,
if you can pull it up some other time. I mean, I'll next month I'll go on to Ecuador. So, if you've got them, then that'd be great.
yeah, that'll be good because I'm kind of lost between the recording and the security. I don't know which question to answer next.
Just appreciate the job you're doing.
Just wanted to interject, the most amazing thing I find about that place is that it's all built without mortar. So
Yeah.
those stones are all just fit together. There's no cement.
I can talk about that too in Cusco. The Temple of the Sun that's built in Cusco, which is now a Catholic church. The stones on the one wall are on a corner are fitted with each face of the stone has a different angle.
Oh.
And where they mate with adjacent stones, you could not put a razor blade in between the stones. And this is all done in a Stone Age culture that did not have iron tools. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
And it was, as you said, it was not, there were peons that did stones and everybody else did something else. Everybody did their stint, grinding stones together.
Mhm.
Quite an interesting culture.
Well, what surprised me was what a short time that culture existed for. Like all the clothing was done in that 120-year period. It's quite remarkable. Let me if there's any other comments, you please. Oh, Dorothy, your hand is raised. Dorothy, did you want to say something, or is it up from
I have to
previously?
unmute myself. Just another thought about the circularity, which is difficult to build with, especially free stone standing. Reminded me of Great Zimbabwe, the immense settlement in Zimbabwe. You probably all heard about it and read about it. I think it was, Miles might remember, something like 1,000, 1,200, a little bit earlier or roughly contemporary. And there the circularity everywhere. And I was wondering, in that circular temple that you mentioned, the pictures didn't make it look as though it was really a completely circular structure, was it? Or is
No, it wasn't. I would say I mean, it was enclosed probably 180 degrees of a circle.
yeah.
But the
Yeah.
rest of the square, no, it
But,
wasn't. No, interesting, whoever mentioned Temple of the Sun in Cusco, it was Hiram Bingham that named that building the Temple of the Sun in Machu Picchu, and it was because of the resemblance to the Temple of the Sun in Cusco.
Yeah. I find it interesting that on opposite hemispheres, freestanding stone structure was used so dramatically in Zimbabwe, Southern Africa, and here in South America. Just one other quick question aside. In your course of your readings, did you come across anything about the lowlands, the eastern side lowlands astronomy? Just thinking about the great rivers, and there was a lot, I think at that time, already a lot of boating on the Tambopata River, for example. And I just wondered whether you came across anything about the use of the sky and guiding and setting trade and so on in the lowlands, which is pretty far away from Machu Picchu.
Yeah. So I didn't, Dorothy. I spent some time in the rainforest in Ecuador. And I'll tell you, there wasn't a whole lot of sky visible. All the time I was there. So I'm it's interesting, but I'm not sure.
Going on the Tambopata River, we were there on a birding trip, but in fact, just before the pandemic, and it's wide open. I mean, it's a huge river, and it just occurred to me because you associate sky navigation often with boating in open water.
Yeah.
And it's quite possible because of the length of the river, and it's at different times flooding and not flooding, and seasonal related changes, that it might have been useful to locals too.
Dorothy, I don't know anything about
Yeah.
that. Sure.
Okay,
Sure.
just thought maybe in your course of your reading you'd come across some mention.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no, interesting. So I'll tell you one of the other things that happened, it happened last month. The RASC newsletter, August the 19th, talked about the full moon of August the 19th, and that's not that big a deal. But it also talked about the August 19th full moon being a blue moon. And that kind of blew me away because I thought that it was only the second full moon in a month that was called a blue moon. So I did a little bit of further reading and found that my naive definition was wrong. Rather than trot into it and give you guys all the information myself, I asked Randy if he would be willing to talk about it, and he thankfully agreed to. So Randy is going to talk a little bit about the blue moons.
Yeah. So of course, I thought this would be a cute little thing, but then it sent me down all sorts of rabbit holes, as a question like this does. So yeah, here's the email I got from Jeff. It surprised me that there was an August 19 full blue moon, and saying, reading further, I realized my long-standing notion of blue moon being the second moon in a calendar month was, to be kind, simplistic. And of course, it's not simplistic. It's actually I spent all weekend on this because I got fascinated. So the term once in a blue moon goes back like there's lots of discussion, but they think even in the 1500s, it was an idiom. And it's not that the moon gets blue, although every once in a while, if there's the right dust from a volcano or from fires in the air, then it can have a slightly bluish hue, and that's rare. So that would make sense. But that's not what we mean when we say a blue moon, as in whatever the radio always says, and tonight is a super blue blood moon, whatever. That's not what they're talking about, it being blue. I told my student today, I'm going to talk about blue moons, and she says, I love blue moons, because apparently they feature in the Smurf world, that babies come to the community during the blue moon. Anyway, she knew all about it. So yeah, it's a thing. But you'll see in the Smurf wiki that a blue moon is a rare astronomical event of second appearance of the full moon for 1 month, which I'm going to interpret means the second time you see a full moon in a calendar month. And certainly the moon does not turn blue at that time. But yeah, it's out there in popular culture. But scholarship on this question usually gets back to this particular publication, the Maine Farmer's Almanac. And there are lots of almanacs across the United States, going back to the 1700s. This one, on the occasion of a blue moon, decided to write an article about it. So let's just blow up part of the article. And this is how you would organize the year in terms of the moons. So there are the 4 seasons, and you can tell from previous discussions in the Maine Farmer's Almanac that they don't use the astronomical date of the equinox and the solstices. They just consistently use the 21st, which also incidentally is what the Christian church uses for its calculation of Easter. The ecclesiastic calendar has first day of spring is always March 21, despite that sometimes it's on the 20th or on the 22nd that the sun crosses the equator. Anyway, in each season, you have the early moon, the mid moon, and the late moon. Okay? Except there's a problem, is that we divide the calendar into 12 months, so about 30 and a half days. The lunar month, the lunation, is 29 and a half days. So there's a day that is lost every month. And so after, 2.5 to 3 years, you're going to be a month behind. So if you have a calendar that is divided the seasons by the months, you're going to have to add an extra month every once in a while. And so the article goes on to say, occasionally the moon comes full 13 times a year. It was usually called the blue moon. There are 7 blue moons in a lunar cycle of 19 years. Okay, now this is one of those fantastic mathematical coincidences that if you were to take 19 years, so that gives you about 7,000 days, then that is to within a couple of hours what 19 lunar months are, but you have to add 7 more months. So 19 times 12 plus 7 times that lunar month, 29 and a half, is within 2 hours, so almost exactly the same as the 19 years of the Earth going around the sun. Just fantastic, amazing. Anyway, that was discovered by the Babylonians. There was a astronomer named Meton of Athens, who I think it was 300 BCE, figured out that 7 extra lunations were needed every 19 years, and then the lunar calendar fit the solar calendar. And that is used all over the world, including the Hebrew calendar. So that's the one that is telling us that this year, the Jewish New Year, is going to take place on 2 Wednesdays from now. But, so in October, it usually happens in September. It moves all over the place. It is always on the new moon of the month of Nisan. And the problem is on the 3rd, 6th, 8th, 11th, 14th, 17th, and 19th year of the 19-year cycle, they add an extra month. In the Jewish calendar, it's Adar, it's around February. You have in normal years, so 1, 2, 4, 5, etc., you have a single month of Adar. And then on the long years, the leap years, you have Adar 1 and Adar 2. And if your birthday happens to be in Adar, you'll celebrate it in Adar 2. Okay. Anyway, it works. Okay. They've been doing it for thousands of years. And it's well known. Okay. Now let's get back to the Maine Farmer's Almanac of 1937. So it became necessary to make a calendar of 13 months for the years when there are 13 months in that year. So that means in one of those 4 seasons, there's not an early, middle, and late moon. There is also a 4th moon. And so what they did is they said the 3rd moon of a season with 4 moons was the blue moon. It was the extra moon. Why it was called blue is just because it's kind of rare. And they already have the saying, once in a blue moon going. So you can see that some of these moons, as named by this tradition, is Yule means Christmas, right? And so you have to fit in that 4th moon such that you have the moon after Yule is the first one after Christmas, and the moon before Yule is the last one before Christmas. So that you have to jig it so that works. But really, it's all about Easter. So what is Easter? Easter is you take the equinox, and by Christian tradition, that's March 21. And then you take the first full moon after, and then you take the Sunday after that. Okay? That has been going on for thousands of years. Actually, I don't know the date that started. That's an interesting question. But at some point in the first 500 years of Christendom, they set that rule. That's another good question. Also, what time zone are they talking about? Because it's going to be different in the Holy Land than in Rome than in Victoria. Okay? Because there are going to be some days that the full moon is going to happen on a Sunday, in some places on a Monday, and then it'll get screwed up by a week. Oy, oy, oy. Anyway, that's not our problem. But the issue is that blue moon after Christmas, if it happens in the winter, then Easter's going to be postponed for a month. And that's important. If your job is leading your congregation in Lent, you can't eat chocolate during that time. You got to know these things. Okay, yeah, so Easter is the Sunday after the egg moon. I doubt it's because of Easter eggs. It's probably because the chickens start laying after winter. Right. Okay. So, Sky and Telescope is not just a passive observer of the astronomical world. They actually influenced how we interpret the blue moon. And there's several articles. If you look up Sky and Telescope Blue Moon, there are about 5 articles over the years about what is a blue moon. This one is the most recent. Actually, no, I think there was one this year also. Anyway, but this was a very good article. And they say that, okay, remember, the Maine Almanac's article was in 1937. And then there was an article that reported on that. And then this fellow in 1946, Hugh Pruitt, he didn't go back to the original article that said it was the 3rd month when there are 4 in a season, he just saw that when there are 13 full moons in a year, the extra one is called a blue moon. And so then he said, so I guess that means, so the second in a month, so I interpreted, was called blue moon. And you see that that is not the same definition as the third moon in a season of 4. Now we're just defining it by the calendar months. Okay? And somehow, while this was not, this was just incorrect reporting of that 1937 article, it became the most common used definition. But it wasn't really very used until the 80s. So Philip Hiscock wrote an article in Sky and Telescope. It's always Sky and Telescope. But among the things, he found that there was a radio show in 1980 that reported that it was the second in a month, which is sometimes called the Sky and Telescope definition. And then this is the thing that really made it blow up. It was in Trivial Pursuit. So if you see under Science and Nature, what is a second full moon in a month called? The answer, a blue moon. Apparently, that is what made it go viral. Incidentally, I think that's a Canadian content also. I think it was Canadians who invented the game Trivial Pursuit.
Yes.
Anyway, so here's the timeline. So it seemed that this tradition of a blue moon being the third full moon in a season goes back a bit. But in 1937, it is very clearly written. It just says certain full moons, but that we know in this crowd here is not just certain. It is the third full moon in a season between the solstices and the equinoxes. 395 of the Common Era. Thank you, Jim. Good research. So I don't know about the 1943 thing, but the 1946, that is the article I was showing you, which by mistake said it was the second full moon in a month. And then it was in Star Date, and it was in the Kids World Almanac. And then 1986, everything changed with Trivial Pursuit. And so I guess I'm interested to know from people in this illustrious crowd, when were you first aware of the idea of the blue moon being the second full moon of a month? Is it something that you remember from before the 1980s? I don't think I was. So let's take a look. So we have the Sky and Telescope rule is dark, and the Maine Farmer's Almanac rule is light. And so you see, they don't happen at the same time at all. But what is actually really cool, and I admit I went to the Wikipedia article and downloaded the table of 200 years of the different definitions of blue moons, and some things came to the fore. So by the Maine, the third full moon of the season, interestingly, it can only happen in 4 weeks in the year, because it only happens, let's just talk about the February one. If the full moon happens somewhere between December 21 and December, I don't know, 26, somewhere around there, then you have time to get 4 full moons in before March 21st. But there's only 1 week in there in February where the blue moon can happen. So you have a blue moon in the 3rd week of February, in March, in August, or November. That's it. And they're very evenly spread out. and it follows the metonic cycle. It's, it's always 7 times every 19 years. And they're, in that between 2.5 and 3 years is the most common interval that you see. I can show the spreadsheet if I break out of my presentation, and it jumps out at you. Okay, the science and tech definition pretty clearly can only happen on the 30th or the 31st of the month, because it's only when you have a full moon in like the 1st or 2nd that you have time 29.5 days later to have another full moon. Also notice that it's different depending on what time zone you're in, because if you're in Greenwich and Universal Time, it could happen that you have the full moon this month, but it's not until the next month when you're in Victoria. Okay, there's all sorts of things. So different people will see the science and tech definition at different times. But the other thing that's interesting is it can never happen in February. February is 29 days long. So if the full moon's on the 1st, I wonder if it were at 1 in the morning on the 1st, then it could be near midnight. So it's possible you could get in February.
On a leap year.
On a leap year. Yeah. I mean, I bet if you look over a longer period, but I'm going to go back. You get this really funny anomaly is that over the 200 years that I looked at, there's about 10 times that you get a blue moon in January and in March, because it was at the end of January and then you skip the 29.5 days and it's at the beginning of March. And so there are actually more science sky and telescope blue moons than there are Maine Farmer's Almanac blue moons, which I haven't seen talked about anywhere. There's also an interesting thing that somebody noticed, that in 1960, there was no blue moon. When there, oh my goodness, I don't remember it, so I'm not even going to talk about it. But you get these funny anomalies in the time series. Anyway, yeah, so Charles Federer, the editor of Sky and Telescope, said, even if the calendrical meaning is new, said Federer, I don't see any harm in it. It's something fun to talk about, and it helps attract people to astronomy. And I want to say, it's okay that the supermoon is a stupid idea. Nobody can actually see that the supermoon is a bit bigger than a micromoon. But damn, it's great publicity for us. We get on the radio, we get to talk about it. People start thinking about orbital mechanics. They're worried about perigees and apogees, and it's fantastic that these things have become viral and people care about it, because it gives the general public, who usually don't pay that much attention to these things, they're thinking about the sky, and that's awesome.
When you get supermoons, you can connect them to tides, because you get huge tides.
Yeah, there is a
Quite
reason
large,
there. Yeah,
quite large tides.
Well, since I saw the last blue moon, I'm no longer alone, without a dream in my heart and without a love of my own.
Way to go, Dave. I had to close off.
Well done.
And there are you know what, this weekend, I also listened to many different versions of the song Blue Moon. And I got to say, the Marcells is the best. So with that, I'm going to end.
So when did they come out?
Wow.
The Marcells was in the late 50s, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the song goes back to the 30s.
Yeah.
I think it's Rodgers and Hart.
Just like to hear it, because I've never heard it.
Oh, you know what? Sharing sound on YouTube, you need an advanced degree that I don't have.
Okay.
If somebody can put it on, I love it. It's the doo-wop version.
I think it's copyright protected.
It needs somebody from who's in not in the room to broadcast it, because you can't turn on your sound on, like Randy can't turn on his sound because it will mess things up.
But I'll happily play
And
it
in
for
any
you
case,
after the broadcast.
when I process the YouTube video, I would have to cut it out anyway because YouTube would reject it. So you're just going to cost me more work.
Thank you very much, Randy, for that presentation. That was just wonderful. Really appreciate that.
And again, thank you for the question, because there's no way I would have put that time into it if you hadn't asked me to.
A very complete answer for sure. Any other moon-related comments here before I...
Yeah, I just want to say, so you say the Babylonians, the Saanich, the Coast Salish people know of 13 moons in a year.
Yes, absolutely.
And they've been here for over 5,000 years.
Yeah.
So they never would have heard it from the Babylonians.
Well, you know, they were paying attention, unlike people today.
Yeah.
Their lives depended on it.
And the Mi'kmaq also have the 13 moons as well.
No, they don't.
Ah.
Dave Chapman's looking for it. He can't find it yet.
Oh. Okay.
That's what he first said to, who's the woman? To
Kathy LeBlanc.
Kathy. So when she came to him about it, and she was showing him what she had, and he said, "Where's the 13th moon?" And she said, "I don't know. There's 12 moons."
Okay,
so this is interesting,
guys.
He's been digging ever since then.
We should get Charles Ennis on this one.
Yeah.
And I posted a link in the chat to the
constellations,
project.
the asterisms, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So Natasha had wanted to tell us something about the International Year of Quantum Science. Cool. You want to kick off with that? Then,
yes, yes, certainly. Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yep.
That's great.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And by the way, I was glad to see that Jim Hesser is on the call, because I first became associated with RASC through Jim. So hi, Jim.
Hello.
That was back in 2009 when we worked on the International Year of Astronomy, and we got Chris Hadfield to come out, and I spoke a little bit about it 2 weeks ago when I was reintroducing myself, because my membership had lapsed a couple of years ago, and so back. So this comes under the category of Education and Public Outreach, EPO. And I'd sent an email to Joe, who then suggested I contact Chris. And Chris, I believe you're on the call as well. So Chris Gaynor suggested that I do a short presentation to Astro Cafe, just to gauge whether there might possibly be any interest in the upcoming UNESCO International Year of Quantum Science and Technology. And I have a question for you all. If people, no, I can't see everyone. Maybe somebody could tell me if any of you are working in or interested in the fields of either quantum astronomy or quantum cosmology. Because if you are, I'd rather pass this presentation over to you, because I myself know nothing about either. But the reason I'm interested in it is because, did anyone wave? Has anyone got their screen?
Dave Payne did. That was the only hand I could see.
Who was that?
David Payne.
Okay, good.
Well, I'm not sure what quantum cosmology is.
Okay.
But I know quantum gravity and that sort of stuff. And
great.
Quantum mechanics and QED and all that stuff.
Okay.
Why don't you go ahead, Natasha?
Yeah. So UNESCO has declared 2025 to be the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology. And the co-chair is actually interesting, because he co-chaired the 2015 International Year of Light that I was actively involved in as a volunteer. So it's good to see that Joe is heading up this project. So what is it? Proclaimed by the General Assembly back in June. It's a year-long observance to raise societal awareness of the importance of quantum science and technology. And the choice of the year 2025 is based on the centenary of Heisenberg's mathematical description of quantum mechanics. So the aim is not just to celebrate, but to ensure that the benefits of quantum science are shared around the world. And so I think what's interesting is they've already got on board quite a few associations who are involved or getting involved. I think this year is a very, very preliminary stage compared to where we were at with the International Year of Astronomy, but it'll pick up probably in the next few weeks. So at the moment, the ones that stood out to me is IAU is involved, the Perimeter Institute, and the Canadian Association of Physicists. And I was Googling around to see if there might be something sort of succinct talking about what is quantum astronomy. And the most interesting that came up was a gathering in Arizona, in Tucson, from the Association of Universities for Research in Astronomy, AURA. And they gathered in March to discuss something new for astronomy, quantum-enabled optical interferometry. And so the possible next step after building giant telescopes, this new capability would make it possible to combine the light from very widely separated telescopes so that they would function as one large collecting area. So they're saying that quantum optics could be a game changer in terms of wavelengths, increasing the resolution and sensitivity over conventional techniques many times over. And I guess we'll make this link available, but there's a professor at the University of Sheffield who, with a colleague, has put together this very short 5-minute YouTube video where he explains in a very engaging way about the quantum future of telescopes. So I won't show it now because it's just over 5 minutes. So the next step, if there is any interest in IYQ, is we could discuss at some future point, some level. I'm visualizing something pretty basic, actually, nothing like IYA 2009. But I think a good place to start would be to find out what the International Astronomical Union is planning on doing, and then simply investigating the possibility of piggybacking on any of their projects to help with EPO in the Victoria area. And this professor, Deborah Elmagreen, she is a professor emeritus at Vassar, and she is the representative on the committee from IAU. So if people at all interested, I could get in touch with her and get a better sense of what the International Astronomical Union is thinking of doing. I have a sense that it's quite early days now. So that's basically it. This is a slide from the organizers. They're aspiring to get the kind of reach that we had in 2015 with the International Year of Light, targeting over 10,000 events in 148 countries. Events can be large or small, local, national, or international. And the international opening ceremony will be in Paris in February. So that is basically the outline. And I'll stop there. I know it's a pretty packed agenda for the rest of the evening, so I think we could just stop at that point and then continue discussion at a future meeting, perhaps.
Yeah, thank you, Natasha. That's really good of you to bring that to attention. I think, I mean, if there is anybody who has interest in it, perhaps you could forward an email to Chris Gaynor, and we'll also put this on the agenda for the next council meeting, and just to see Natasha if there's interest in going forward.
That sounds good.
Okay, super. Well, thank you very much for bringing that to attention. Um, uh, there was an event that Bill Weir and Kirsten attended a short time ago, the First Nations Three Stars Dark Sky Festival. Would one of you guys like to speak about that, Kirsten or Bill? Okay, he's pointing.
I can speak to it, and then Bill can follow up with things that anything I missed or any add-ons. But yeah, Bill and I attended. It was a 3-day event. The Huayut, well, 2 days. We arrived on the Tuesday. Bill got there about probably noon or 1-ish on the Tuesday. I got there later, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And we didn't leave until Thursday, kind of just before noon. So yeah, two-day event. It was overall, it was a really it was a very rewarding experience on a number of levels. I think it's fair to say that it was small. There was about, I'd say maybe 25, 30 people that had been invited to attend. It was a pilot project, very small, very much a trial test period where the nation, in conjunction with this creative organizing company that was had some very kind of unique individuals that were helping the nation involve and organize it. They had invited representatives of various media and magazine companies. There was government representatives from the provincial level as well as local levels. And then there was a number of tourist associations from across Vancouver Island that were there. So and then there was kind of the I would sort of say that the scientific and quasi-scientific members that were invited to provide kind of content support. And that's where Luc Simard from the observatory, the Dominion Astrophysical here in Victoria. There was Bill and I from RASC for amateur astronomy, and then there was actually a PhD candidate from Yale in Connecticut, an astrophysicist who was there, and then there was also an astrophotographer from Saskatchewan. So it was kind of this very interesting mixture of government, media, tourism associations, and scientific, and then promotional people, all of which we were there to see if this could be a successful event going forward. And I think the nation is looking for financial partners, it's looking for promotion, it's looking for potential government grant money, all that kind of stuff. And as you know, RASC representatives were invited, I guess, at the council level to basically bring scopes and assist with the sky watching. And so it was a very full 2 days. It was the second day in particular, day 2, that the main day. I mean, it was very early. The ferry was there sharp at 7:30 a.m. on one side of Bamfield, and we weren't done until 10, 11 o'clock that night. It was full, and it was kind of like the bus was taking us from one event to another, just to see how these events, I guess, kind of landed with us. There were potentially excursions that the nation was going to be looking to develop, and some of them were very, very special. We had the privilege of being taken to the traditional, or I guess the historical or ancestral village site of the Huayut called Kiat, I think. No, Kian. And it was this beautiful, beach site. You could just sense the history and the kind of the ancestral nature of it. It was quite a hike in. I would say it was at least a kilometer, maybe a kilometer and a half to 2 kilometers. And it was a fairly, I would call it a moderate hike. Yeah, so they're going to have to do a little bit of work, I think, just making sure they've got things available for everyone, regardless of, say, mobility challenges and that kind of stuff. But anyway, it was really good. The presentations were good. All of it was great. The one thing that was just very unfortunate was the was the weather in the Bamfield area for the 2 days, the 2 evenings was just kind of terrible. It clouded over in a it was just absolutely nothing to see, cloud and fog. And so on the second night, Bill and I set up all of the scopes regardless of the fact that there was nothing to see, we set everything up. So, we did kind of a bit of a show and tell, but the media was kind of going crazy that was there. People were coming out to look at the scopes. Bill had set them up to look at, boats on the dock and stuff like that. But there was a lot of pictures taken that night. So, it's going to be really interesting. The other thing of note just on that night was the telescope presentation, the donation scope, and Bill might want to speak more directly to that, but it was a really wonderful handoff and presentation. It happened on the dinner of the second night at the Bamfield Marine Station, and Bill said some really great words to the nation representative that was there, and acknowledged that it was a private donor that had been identified through James DeFrancesco from the observatory, and it was a very touching moment. The nation representative, I think, really, it was very good, very, very good. So I think overall it felt really good. It struck me as a nation really trying to find a way to connect on issues of importance to it, reaching out to the community, and it was very, I guess, encouraging to see that they had identified an astronomy related event involving dark skies. They really connect with that due to their cultural heritage around the stars. It means a great deal to them, the stars and the sky, and their cultural symbol for their nation is 3 stars, and meaning I think it's like meaning like the star of yesterday, the star of today, and the star of tomorrow. We heard some very kind of deep and touching cultural stories from nation representatives throughout the days, and it was very encouraging. So I think they're going to be pursuing this. I think for some folks that are on council, you'll see that the issue of dark sky preservation has come up. Not directly from the nation themselves. I expect we might be contacted by the nation at some point for expertise or people that know about dark sky designation and dark sky preserves. I expect there may be a contact from them at some point, as well as potentially on the school program and the school outreach program. So I think they know that we're here and that we have expertise and people that may be able to help them in their pursuit. But yeah, It's kind of my summary. Did I miss anything, Bill?
I don't think so. That was good. I was curious as to what, because you blew out of there on the Thursday morning as soon as it was over. I wasn't sure. I think you were just done. It was a very, and you didn't even get the first part of the first day.
Didn't, I know.
I was sad.
It was a very full, it was an intense couple of days. There was a lot going on. Just a lot of connection with people. A lot of people were very interested in the scopes and talking about things to do with astronomy and dark skies throughout the event for sure. So it's an interesting topic. I mean, one thing I don't really know is, and this, talk about it perhaps at another time, but in terms of, RASC's role as an advocacy group, I mean, I'm not really familiar with that. And how involved RASC gets in terms of lobbying and that kind of stuff. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that myself.
Well, they're just beginning the process of trying to figure out how to get the dark sky preserve for their area, because they control the north end of the West Coast Trail. And the Pachidat and the Diridat control the middle and the southern half. So they're focused on their section, like their territory. And so they're still trying to figure that out. But so Dorothy, you're out there somewhere. Okay, so when I was getting into heavy sticker trading at the band office after taking them to telescope and showing people there, and we're in the middle of, this sounds funny, sticker trading, and I had a whole little stack of Dorothy, your light pollution cards, and I said, do you want some of these? Because I'm just throwing stuff out, right? And they grabbed onto them and they were looking at them. So because you are the technical owner of, I guess, the copyright of the cards, they will be posting those on their website. They were like, we could take these and we could scan them and we could put, I said, I'm pretty sure the person who technically owns these cards in that way, that I don't think you would have a problem with that, because I could see that being helping them if that is part of their council website, the Hawaiian website, having all this information about light pollution and the importance of dark sky for nature and humanity and all that stuff, only helping them to get their designation that they're looking for and getting the RASC dark sky designation. So I tentatively gave them permission, but they're going to take it anyway. So whether you want to or not, they're going to be.
It's there. It's delightful. I've been pushing that since, well, what was it, 2009, the Galileo year. They were made for that year, and Sid deserves some credit for them because he wanted to have something on lighting that would go along with the astronomy pictures, of which are not too interesting, although kids like them. But my feeling is the ones from Casca, I guess. And so I made this set of 9, and we first were delivered to schools, and Lauri can speak to how soon, how much they were delivered, but there's still lots of them there. But the cards are up on our website.
I was just
to be updated, but they're there to download. I gave acknowledgement, as you know, on the bottom of the card, the sources of information on the back.
They grabbed those fast. As soon as I showed them
That's great to hear.
Grabbed them fast.
That's very good.
They thought they'd be perfect for helping with this. And so I just thought I'd put that out there. Yeah, like Kirsten was saying, it was a deep, for me, it was very emotional. It was very emotional the whole time there.
If they come in for more about developing an application to the RASC for any dark sky association. I might be able to help them. It's been a number of years since I was on the committee, but I was involved when these dark sky sites were first being set up, and how to write it goes, anyone experienced writing applications for money from any government organization knows how important it is to get to know ahead of time what's really important to include and not to hum and haw. And so I could possibly still be able to help a bit with that, just developing the application, but no promises.
Yeah, this whole festival idea they have, though, it's really in its seminal phases. They're just trying to figure out what can and can't work, because they're trying to pattern it after the Jasper one, which really focuses in some way on the astronomy, but it's really about all the aspects of what a dark sky area has to offer. And so our astronomy aspect would be as small as it was when we were at the event past week. And I was talking to someone and he was saying, oh, you needed like clear sky. Well, we just would need to go 20 kilometers up the road to get out of the fog zone. We could build a platform up in a clearing up on the hills, and then that would be one of the events that people could go to. Because actually at Jasper, they drive for 20 minutes outside the city to a little lake where the dark sky observing goes on with telescopes after an indigenous fireside chat like we had there. So this one wasn't real because they shoved everything that might go in over 3 or 4 or 5 days into under 48 hours. So that's why we're like running around like crazy. And then they could expand it, and people would then sign up to do different things that they wouldn't happen in conjunction. They might happen at the same time in 2 different places. So not too many, but accessibility, that's like out the window because it's Banfield. There's nowhere there that's accessible to anybody with physical disabilities. It just isn't that kind of place. That's like asking that to be on the side of a mountain. It's just not going to happen. So that part is just people that can't do it. They aren't going to go because they can't. They first of all have to get there.
Yeah.
Because the road is still, if you go the Yubo way, horrible. And if you go the Port Alberni way, it's a long ways. It's fine if you're coming through Nanaimo, but to come from Victoria, it's an all-day journey. I didn't get back till almost 7 o'clock at night because I spent a great deal of time in, what's the name of the town? I spent a great deal of time at the band office because I took the scope there and actually showed people how to use it. And then, like I said, we got into sticker trading and it went all crazy.
There's always the possibility of a boat. I know that there was a biology conference, I think years ago, but that did arrange, it's small scale, but arranged to boat people from Victoria to Banfield.
It's still a journey.
I mean, it involves a lot. But just throwing out a thought, another way to get there. Of course, you still have to get around once you're there
Well, float planes are really the only practical way to get there in a reasonable period of time. And then you could go right from Vancouver, which is where most of their market is.
Interesting. Well, listen, thank you guys for that presentation. I mean, I think there's a lot of aspects to it, and I think that's also something that we need to take further and talk about, and probably get a little bit more debrief from you guys in terms of how we can move this forward. Are they going to have another one? Like, is it planned on an annual basis, or is it just whatever?
Well, they still haven't done the final assessment. So on the Thursday morning, we all got together and we did that group thing after a big conference of like the breakdown where you draw things on tables and they post-it notes. And then people are going to take that away. And a lot of thinking is going to go on about where this needs to go. Because as I was talking to one of the people who I met actually online a long time ago when I went to the Jasper one, it was so funny. I showed up to one thing with Jasper Dark Sky toque on, and she says, "Where did you get that toque?" And then we realized we've been having email correspondence for a couple of years. As I was, then COVID hit, and we were trying to figure out how I could get to the Jasper Dark Sky thing when I'd won a couple of nights there. So that was kind of funny, but it's just, they're going to have to figure it out. And I'm sure we'll be contacted next year or in 2 years. They have a lot to figure out first.
So we'll get some feedback from that we can then talk to. Is that your sense?
Maybe this is not our ball.
Okay.
This is not our ball to even think of taking. We're just going to be invited guests the next time around.
Okay. Well, thanks both of you guys for attending. Yeah, and thanks for the report.
They fed us well. One night it was like super gourmet dinner. It was really nice.
Yeah, the first night it was it was probably one of the nicest gourmet. I've never had salmon Wellington. Had it now. I have now had it. It was very delicious.
With
a little wine.
With a
little
dashi
wine pairings.
miso sauce.
Yeah, with and there was caviar in it as well. It was crazy.
That was a high bar for you. I wanted to just move forward because there's a couple of other things I wanted to make sure that we touched on. Randy, I think you wanted to talk about the International Biodiversity Day.
Let's see. I would be really keen for Lauri to talk about FDAO events more, and if there's time, then I'll talk about that.
Okay, good enough. Lauri, do you have some things that you want to say then?
Oh, sure. I just wanted to say thank you to Chris Gaynor and to Bob McDonald for rescuing us on last Thursday for the Canada in Space. Some of you may already know, but when we got to Thursday about noon, Randy Atwood, who was in Victoria and had come from Toronto to help with this program, got COVID. And so he was not able to be part of the program. So there were only two lovely, wonderful historians and not three. But of course, knowing Bob McDonald and Chris Gaynor, all I had to say is, hey, could you just kind of just keep going for just a little while? And they're fine, no problem. And it was great presentation. Everybody really enjoyed it. Thank you to David, who did all the technical stuff behind, worked really hard on the audio and the video, and to Margie, who helped a great deal setting up on the night, to help us with some of the refreshments, and to some of the other FDAO people who also helped. And we had a really good crowd, and it was a really nice night to say that. And thank you to Alec Schmidt and to Chris Purse, who helped outside, because it was quite a nice night, and we threw out one telescope at the very end, and people stayed around for quite a while to look at Saturn. So it was good. Thank you to everybody who helped for that. And then coming up this Thursday is Bending Light, which is the video that has been or the film that has been made, and sorry, I can't think of the name of the fellow. It's just gotten me. I'm sorry. And it was originally only for people who had memberships in the FDAO, because it could not be it couldn't be put out to the public because of copyright. But they now have kind of said if you've got somebody who's a friend who's an FDAO member, they can get something for you. They can get a ticket for you if you'd like to go. Or if you've been to some of the recent FDAO star parties, then you may have gotten something. We cannot publish the link to the tickets publicly, so you have to get it through somewhere else to get the ticket. But there are still some available, and that's this Thursday at 7:00. So that's the time for the program tonight. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. David, did you have something that you wanted to say about
Yeah,
this?
yeah, very, very quickly. There's a council meeting on Tuesday coming up, and that normally would be the first Tuesday, which would be the beginners SIG. So I will be sending a note to everyone, but I'm hoping the following week is okay. So instead of October 1st, October 8th. But I will be sending a note around. And also we're going to be moving to the new centrally administered list. So if you have not notified me that you want to stay on the beginners list, you should do so shortly, because we'll be operating off of the new list soon.
Thank you, David.
Right, thanks.
At the beginning of the program, before a lot of people were logged on, Susan had raised a question about sky observation sites in New Zealand, where she's going to be traveling to shortly. Susan, do you have anything further you wanted to speak to about that? Was there any specific locations or areas that you were looking for the sites?
Yeah, but by the way,
I
can't.
by the way, Susan, I left a link in the chat to a web page.
Okay.
There's quite a large number of dark sky reserves in New Zealand. I've not been to any of these ones, but I know of people that have gone to a couple of retreats. I can't remember the name of one. I think it starts with a K or a T, and it's sited at a church. So you stay overnight at a church, and it's really aimed at I guess photographers, I guess. But if you just want to go to dark skies, there's a good list of sites.
Yeah, I did a fair amount of online researching, and everything that I came up with was out of town, or like that place in the churches is overnight. And because I'm on a guided tour,
right,
it has to be something near where I'm staying, like in Queenstown or Queenston, however it's pronounced. There's a hill, so I could go up the hill, for example, if somebody has been up there and would recommend it. So I'm looking for the informal places that people have had some luck at, just because I can't get to the formal ones, unfortunately.
Yeah, Susan, you know what I would suggest that you do is make sure you go armed with some kind of star maps for the Southern Hemisphere, and then maybe keep some notes about what you see. The way the horns of the moon are shaped are quite unusual when you get down there. So that's an interesting thing. There's lots of things that you could do even from urban sites that don't require, the really darkest of sites. But yeah, if you go there, I would recommend kind of just looking at what some of the sites are down in the Southern Hemisphere, so you'll know what to look for, because there are certainly some really spectacular ones down there.
And what the ones that I found, I just couldn't access.
So Susan, where exactly are you headed to in New Zealand? What's sort of the itinerary?
Well, it's a tour called The Best of New Zealand, so I'm seeing a little bit of a lot in 2 weeks. So yeah,
are you
more time. No, we're starting in Auckland and immediately heading south.
Okay. Are you going to stop in Hamilton perhaps?
No. Well, I think there was an observatory in Wellington or near Wellington, and we're going to Wellington.
Yeah,
I'd have to get my list.
Get outside of town. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're stopping in Hamilton, I could direct you to the Hamilton Astronomical Society.
Oh, well, okay. I'll see if I'm going anywhere near Hamilton.
Because they have a good sized telescope on a site in town, and there's a couple of
Oh,
really
okay.
areas just outside of town.
Okay.
And
All
any of
right.
the
Well,
place where you're going, where it's a small community, just get outside of the light polluted area. Most of
yeah.
them are small enough that you can walk. Take a good pair of binoculars.
Okay. Good
Yeah,
idea.
I would add that New Zealand is a very agricultural country.
Yep.
So there are a lot of dark areas that are easily accessible, and they have a lot of country roads.
Okay.
So it's not hard to just get out of the city a little bit. And
Hmm.
you're going to be in some pretty small towns anyway, because there's,
Yes.
there's only about 5
Yeah.
large cities in the whole of New Zealand.
Yeah.
The rest of it,
in most of the towns, a 20-minute walk will get you where it's dark.
yeah,
Oh, okay. Well, that's helpful to know. Yeah.
I don't think you're going to have any issue finding pools of darkness. A pure dark sky site, maybe not as easy, depending on your time constraints. But
Hmm.
as has been suggested, take binoculars, make sure you see 47 Tucanae, Alpha Centauri. There's some highlights that you need to prepare for. So get the star charts out, or the app, whatever you use to find things in the sky, and just make a list. You can buy a book if you want to.
For sure.
There's Southern Sky, the Best of Southern Sky books out on the press. You can buy one of those if you want to. So, but just do a little preparation, and be prepared to be disoriented, because you're on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
And,
well, actually, I
the
don't know much
celestial
about
sphere
it.
looks quite different.
Yeah. What we see at the horizon line here is going to be up in the middle of the sky. So that's the one thing that's disorienting, right?
And inverted.
Yeah. And Hercules appears to be upside down. So
yeah.
So
You'd be laying on his side or upside down.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I know so little about our own sky that I won't get disoriented.
Well, maybe that's an advantage.
Susan, Lauri has posted in the chat that there's a New England Royal Astronomical Society, so there may be for New Zealand as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Yep. Okay, thank you all.
Yeah, thanks everybody for kicking in there. David, I'm sorry, Randy, it's over to you now, man.
Okay, so I do want to say that on Tuesday morning at 3 a.m, 4 of us went to Cattle Point. David did a little bit of an email about it, but boy, it was fun. And so it was Kevin, Alex, David, and me. And I hope other people partook of the event from home. It was a little frustrating in that the occultation was at something like 4:07, and the clouds came in at 4:03. Oh, you watched it. But until the clouds came in, it was really spectacular. And I have to in particular say Alex's Canon was a total joy to look through, with a very good eyepiece too. And so I think it was a great little time we had.
Well, I'm so glad I saw it in my refractor, because I could see it in full view. I took a picture actually just with my phone, but it does not do justice to seeing a beautiful Saturn right next to the moon. So it was really cool, and I was so hopeful. When I arrived just after 3, it was still relatively clear. But I'll have to say, even though the moon clouded over, the other side of the sky was clear. So we were looking at Orion after you left, Randy. We were looking at Orion and various Jupiter. I think, Kevin, didn't we look at Jupiter for a little while?
Yeah. 4 moons, I think. Or was it 3 moons?
Yeah, the one was really, really far away from the rest. But yeah, it was really cool. Like I don't know. In some ways, I may have regretted losing sleep over it, but it was still fun.
Well, it was a work day for me, so I was really regretting it. Okay, quick announcement, nothing to do with astronomy. On October 5th, I will be part of the UNESCO International Geodiversity Day at the museum. I have organized it totally following the model that we have for International Astronomy Day. When I heard that this is a new event, it's only 2 years old, but it's supposed to be an annual event from now on. I said, I know how to run this event because I'm with you, wonderful people. And so instead of trying to organize it all, I contacted all the various geoscience clubs and institutions in town, and everybody's going to have desks there, and we have 4 talks. If you come, it's going to look just like International Astronomy Day, but instead of people looking up, they'll be looking down. So what does it mean, geodiversity? It's a stupid term. I hate it. So the very clever public relations people at the museum gave it a subtitle, Celebrating Everything That Makes and Shapes the Earth. And that makes sense. Anyway, so it's geoscience. And we've got cavers there, and we've got the paleontologists and the Lapidary Society. We've got the British Columbia Geological Survey. We at the Natural Resources Canada will be talking about the new earthquake early warning system. It's going to be great. So just like IAD, now it's IGD. There you go. So that is 10 till 3 on Saturday, October 5th in Clifford Hall, by the lobby of the museum. And instead of looking up at the sun outside in the tent, my friend Tark Hamilton will be Dr. Rock. Bring any rock. Try to stump him. He's unstumpable. He will identify not just what the rock is, but probably where it came from and how old it is. He'll tell you more about your favorite rock than you thought was possible to know. That's the announcement.
So bring your rock collections along with you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
At the Royal BC Museum, everything you know about International Astronomy Day, we're copying.
So if I bring a rock from Mars, you'll be able to identify it?
He will definitely be able to recognize that.
That's all I want.
He has a penchant for Mars.
Is there anything anybody else wants to raise this evening?
Just a reminder about next week, being that it's Truth and Reconciliation Day, so there will not be an Astronomy Cafe next Monday.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, you drive all the way down.
Don't show up.
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you. It's 9 o'clock now. It's been an interesting evening. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And I will now close the Astro Cafe for today. Good night, everybody.
Right.